Schufelt, and I'm a school support counselor with Safe Schools and Wellbeing portfolio at the Thames Valley District School Board. And tonight, my colleague Megan will now introduce herself as well.
Hi, everybody. My name is Megan Pallant. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm a member of the Safe Schools and Wellbeing team with Thames Valley, and my role this year is an implementation coach. So I get to partner with a number of schools in our board to implement the essential conditions for learning. So things like building relationships and supporting students' regulation is a lot of what my role entails. So we're very happy to be here tonight and host this session. So thank you for joining.
Thanks. So as Megan pointed out, we are very fortunate to be a part of this collaboration between local school boards and community partners to host these presentations online. And we do offer these presentations throughout the year with varying topics and presenters. So if you click on the link in this slide, it will take you to our website and where you can find a list of upcoming presentations and provide more information about key contacts. Will be presented at the end with a slide just of who you can contact. So before I introduce our speaker tonight, I just want to let our audience know how you can communicate with us should you have questions throughout the presentation. So if you look along the top toolbar in Teams, you will see an image of two overlapping speech bubbles with question marks in them. And so if you hover over that image, it will say Q&A. So at any time you like, you can use this feature to ask questions, and we will then relay this to the speaker at the conclusion of the presentation. And it's also important that you are aware this session is being recorded. And as such, we'd ask that you not share your name or identifiers to protect your privacy. So if you have any questions that are specific to your family's unique needs, we will contact or give you contact information during our concluding remarks, and we'll follow up for private conversation after that. So tonight we are so thrilled to welcome Constable Wilson from London Police Services, and I'll hand it over to her to continue with her presentation tonight.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Megan. Thank you.
All right, so just give us a moment and I will stop sharing. Okay.
All right.
Perfect. Thanks everyone for being here tonight. As mentioned, my name's Constable Jackie Wilson. I'm a member of the London Police Service. I currently work in our Community Services Unit. I'm formerly a school resource officer and currently work doing a lot of youth engagement and dealing with problems that our youth are facing in the community, and also act as a bit of a liaison right now with the school boards. So this topic here is something I'm very invested in and have presented on a lot in the past. So I'm really glad that all of you are here tonight and are able to learn this information, because I think it's just super vital for our youth right now. So I will say it's been a while since I have presented virtually, so bear with me. I do tend to talk a bit fast, so I'm going to do my best to try not to do that, but feel free to kind of let me know if I'm going way too fast, and I'll try and slow down.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So yeah, tonight we're focusing on cyberbullying, and I'm going to hopefully give you an idea a bit about the problems we're seeing with cyberbullying, and then focus on how we can kind of work collaboratively as parents, as caregivers, working with the school and working with police to keep our youth safe online and in our community. So to start off with, we'll just kind of talk a bit about what cyberbullying is. So basically any kind of bullying that goes on using any sort of communication device. So that could be with a phone, tablet, online, on your desktop, anything like that. And it takes place in a lot of different forms. So sometimes it's on social media, sometimes it's just through texting. A lot of the times we see it in apps and group chats. It also takes place on video games. So it's kind of going on everywhere online, and the people that are doing this are kind of using different tactics to intimidate or harass people online. The behavior that we're seeing is often targeted, deliberate, and it can be very abusive. And then the goal is to harm that other person. Lots of different ways that we see cyberbullying. A lot of the stuff that I see in my job involves racist messages that are being used online, death threats. Youth right now are using apps and social media to plan fights, and then those take place either during the day at school or outside in the community. Sometimes it's just what starts off as innocent things, such as making fun of someone or how they look, just sending mean messages, embarrassing things, stuff like that. And then it often sort of escalates to much higher level stuff. And then that's sort of when we get involved. We'll get into this a bit more as well. So cyberbullying can also include sharing intimate images or videos of someone when they don't know about it. Creating polls, you see that sometimes on different social media sites or on apps. We get people impersonating other youths online and then acting as that other youth and targeting other youths. So that gets tricky because we don't know who's behind the device and who is the person doing the bullying. And then with anything online, people kind of start with something that they think is private and isn't meant to be shared, but it's really easy for our youth to capture those images and then share something that was initially intended to be private, and then it becomes a much bigger problem. Snapchat especially, and I will talk specifically about that a bit later, but a lot of youth kind of think, oh, Snapchat's safe because my messages disappear. They're not there afterwards. Any images I share disappear. Well, it is quite easy to still take a screenshot of that image. And then again, they'll push back and say, oh, but Snapchat notifies me if someone's taken a screenshot. But let's try and remind them how easy it is for someone to have another device. Then, maybe you're on your phone and you grab your iPad and you take a picture of that, or your friend's probably sitting next to you and they have their phone and they can very easily take a picture of whatever it is that you didn't intend to have shared amongst other people. So when we talk about cyberbullying among youth, it's a really big problem that we're dealing with right now. This data is a little bit older, but 2019, we were looking at 25% of the youth aged 12 to 17 had reported being cyberbullied within the last year. I'm sure you can imagine since 2019, since COVID, the usage of devices has gone up, exponentially among our youth. So that number for sure has definitely increased by then. So, why do we care about this? We care because we know our youth are spending a ton of time on devices and online, and it's just at this point really likely that your child has either witnessed or been a target of cyberbullying themselves. Something I always really like to emphasize too is that cyberbullying can really be a lot more dangerous than traditional bullying. Thankfully, when I was younger, cell phones were not a thing. We didn't have social media, right? So bullying went on, but it was a lot more effort involved in bullying, and it took place face-to-face. Now bullies can hide behind a screen. There's no face-to-face with the victim, and this stuff takes place 24/7. Our youth are home on their devices all the time. So something that used to just sort of be a school issue and then wasn't something that plagued them kind of when they went home after school, now it's kind of full on, it's happening all the time. And that has some real significant mental health effects. And we'll talk about that a bit too. Things going viral as well, right? So something that used to just take place between a few people, now all of a sudden they're online in these big group chats or are shared amongst, not just one school, all the schools, right? Everyone knows about this stuff. Dangerous because parents and teachers might not know what's taking place. Again, traditional bullying, face-to-face, teachers are hearing it, parents are hearing it. With all this stuff online, it's very possible that an adult doesn't know what's going on in this situation. And then obviously we're looking at the permanence of things that are posted online, right? When something's posted or shared in an app, you don't know what's going to happen to it. So something that in the past might have resolved itself really quickly in a day or two as sort of everyone forgot about it and moved on. We see this stuff resurfacing down the fact, and we see this stuff following sort of our youth around. Something else I kind of always like to emphasize as far as the difference between physical bullying and cyberbullying, I think we've done a really good job in the schools, educating about physical bullying and teaching students their role and how guilty they can be as a bystander in traditional bullying. And I think it's really important that we emphasize the same thing, is in place for cyberbullying. So if you're a youth that's in a chat group that sees this stuff going on and is, being that bystander to cyberbullying, you are just as guilty as you were being a youth, standing there watching a fight happen on the playground or standing watching a fight happen at White Oaks Mall at night, right? So I think that's something that's really important to emphasize as well, and to really teach our youth to stand up and not be that bystander for these cyberbullying incidents. I'm going to use the term group chat a lot here today because I think that's one of the biggest problems I see, is that, like I said, these group chats are running rampant amongst these youths. They're all in it. It really creates a toxic environment online and fosters this culture of fear and intimidation amongst our youths, and that gets really scary. Another thing I really see is that youths are taking on this sort of vigilante mindset. So something that starts out little with someone, you know, saying something bad about another person, then all of a sudden, you know, another youth is like, oh, well, you said this bad thing about my friend. Now it's my problem and I'm going to take that on. And, you know, really it just explodes and amplifies. And something that started off pretty little is now, because so many people are witnessing it, it now grows into something much bigger. And then it's really easy for that youth to sort of try and to justify it in their mind as, oh, well, you know, I beat that person up because I was standing up for my friend. I was just having their back, right? So that vigilante mindset is something we kind of have to try and shift our youth away from. Yeah, and just emphasizing, you know, something that starts, they like to use the term beef, right? Oh, well, this person has beef with me, or they have beef with my friend. Well, it's not your job to stand up for a beef between other people. So now, yeah, talking about the negative effects. So physical bullying, we know there's a lot of negative effects that can go along with that. A lot of the same effects happen with cyberbullying. Some of them, though, can be much more amplified because, like I said, it's 24/7. It's you know, relentless. It's going on all the time for them. So we see a ton of depression and anxiety, physical health issues. Maybe, you know, youth are turning to alcohol or drugs as a coping mechanism. Definitely seeing instances of increased suicidal thoughts and potential suicide, self-esteem issues, problems in school, and then definitely violence, right? Because this cyberbullying often escalates into physical violence, and that becomes a really big problem. And just, yeah, the main thing being that, you know, these effects can really be severe and much longer lasting than some of the effects that we see with physical bullying. So what do our children need to know? And I touched on a bit of this already, right? So bullying doesn't need to have a physical component for it to be considered bullying. So I think a lot of youth kind of think that, you know, what they're saying online and doing online is not the same as actual bullying, but it really is. So harassing someone, threatening someone, all of those things online, that's just as serious as doing it in person. And again, I talked about that role of a bystander in physical bullying incidents. I think it's something that we really, really need to drill home with cyberbullying. Youth thinking that they can kind of hide behind an anonymous account or a fake account online, right? Helping them to really understand, you know, everything they do online can be traced, and it's not necessarily anonymous. And anything they do on a phone, device, tablet, anything like that can be recorded or is recorded. And yeah, so it's something, you know, just when using anything online, it's really important that we teach our kids that, because it's not something that they realize. Another thing that a lot of kids don't realize, and I like to emphasize as well, is that cyberbullying and things that go on outside of school hours on their phones in the community can still have school level consequences, right? So the Safe Schools Act is there to keep our youth safe in school. Bullying is considered a serious offense under this act and is something that could lead to suspension and expulsion. This act also covers activity that takes place outside of the school building that may have an impact on the safety and the climate of the school in general. So we see this all the time, right? So someone comes to a teacher with a video of a fight that happened outside in the community. It's involving youth at school. That student involved in the fight, or those students involved in the fight, may be suspended from school based on their action outside of school because they're creating an environment within the school that is not safe. So I think a lot of youth don't realize that, and a lot of parents don't realize that too. So it's important as well, because if you're getting a phone call from a principal saying your kid's suspended because of a fight that took place on the weekend, you know, you might not get that, but no, it's their job to keep students safe within the school and foster a safe school climate. So those consequences are often really, really important to keep your students safe at school. When we talk about the role of police. So as far as anything that takes place online, the London Police Service has a couple units that do high level things online. So our Internet Child Exploitation Unit deals with essentially child pornography stuff for the most part, and safety of children online, some human trafficking stuff with youth. And then we have a digital forensics unit that is involved in writing warrants, getting information off devices and things like that. So any matters involving internet exploitation and then other serious internet crimes. So sometimes that includes getting photos, files, histories, anything like that. When I talked earlier about, nothing that you do on a device or on a computer being private or being something that's going to disappear, right? These guys are high level investigators and are able to basically find things on computers that none of us normal lay people would ever be able to figure out how to do. That being said, most cyberbullying investigations don't reach a threshold for involvement from this unit. There's a ton of privacy issues involved with accessing information from social media websites like IP addresses, because most of them are based out of the United States or other countries. So as Canadian officers and judges here in Canada, they won't grant warrants for us to get IP addresses for a lot of those sites unless it's a very, very high level investigation. So kind of two-sided. Nothing you do online is private and is going to be deleted forever. However, it's not as simple as a parent calling me because something happened on Snapchat, on Instagram, whatever, and me being able to right away figure out where that IP address came from and who did it. So it is a little gray in that area, but certainly for high-level investigations, police are able to find out a lot of stuff. So that being said, there's a lot of other units within our police service that respond to reports of the lower level online safety issues. So in my role, I deal with cyberbullying a ton, dealing with online threats, harassments, fake accounts. We have a whole fraud unit that deals specifically with fraud stuff. So in my role, we really work collaboratively with school staff. A lot of the times we're hopefully able to resolve some of these issues at the school level and try and avoid any high-level police consequences. That being said, there's certainly instances where police consequences are most appropriate. In those cases, we do lay charges. We also have the option to have youth center, pre-charge diversion programs, and do other things like that. And then another big piece of the role that the police can play in this is obviously education and prevention. And a lot of that falls on the officers that work amongst in my unit with me. So within our community services unit and our crime prevention unit, we do a lot of education and try and talk about ways that we can prevent this stuff. So yeah, cyberbullying can absolutely lead to criminal charges, even for youth. So once a youth turns 12 years old, they're in a position where police can lay charges when appropriate. So we always act within the confines of the Youth Criminal Justice Act, which makes us sort of take a step back from the situation, look at the totality of the circumstances, whether the youth has had previous police involvement, things like that. And that always guides our decision, but absolutely we can and do lay charges for youths as young as 12 related to cyberbullying, especially when we start to see things that have started online and festered into planned attacks, planned fights, premeditated things that happen at school, or when we're looking at things like death threats, even when they're happening online, very serious. So yes, absolutely, those things can lead to charges. So common charges that we see related to cyberbullying are criminal harassment or uttering threats. So uttering threats is pretty standard. So making someone fear for their safety by making a threat towards them. So that can be as simple as I'm going to beat you up to the high level of uttering death threats where you're telling someone that you're going to come find them at school and you're going to kill them, or I'm going to get a gun and I'm going to shoot you, right? So that's a very serious offense, uttering threats, uttering death threats, something that could absolutely lead to charges. Criminal harassment, when you're making someone fear for their safety by repeatedly communicating with them. So we see that online a lot. So online harassment, just constantly seeking out someone, whether it's just sending them messages about how terrible they are, making fun of them, whatever. That person blocks you and then you make a new account to seek them out again and harass them. And so it's that repeated behavior that's making someone feel uncomfortable or fear for their safety. And definitely something we do see online, and we see that with sort of groups of youth sometimes too, where it's groups of youth that are ganging up and targeting specific other youths with that constant repeated communication. Other charges that we see related to cyberbullying. So assault is obviously a big one, right? So we talk about physical violence that comes from the cyberbullying. Just in the last few weeks, an overwhelming number of fights that have taken place in schools or just outside of school hours. Most of it that I've been investigating has all started online. Someone saying something about someone, whatever it might be. When we talk about assault, it's important to kind of understand there is a certain thing called a consensual fight. So two people can have a consensual fight between them. I can say to Cindy, you and I are going to fight today, and we're going to go meet at 1 o'clock and do that. That's fine and dandy. However, the line gets crossed between a consensual fight to an assault when someone in that fight brings out a weapon. So as soon as a weapon is involved, you can no longer consent to that. So a big problem we see with youth now is the majority of them are carrying knives with them in the community and knives with them to school. It's unfortunate, but it is certainly the reality right now. So something that starts off as a consensual fight where a couple people decide that they're going to meet up on the playground after school now turns into an assault with a weapon investigation because someone has pulled a knife out in this fight. Another instance where a fight no longer is consensual is when an injury occurs that's more than sort of transient and trifling in nature. So we see concussions, broken bones, things like that. Now it's all of a sudden level 2 assault, what it's called, right? Where someone assault causing bodily harm, and no longer can you consent to that. So what can start as something that you think is consensual can go sideways real fast by, yes, like I said, someone pulling out a knife in the middle of that, whether the knife is just out or forbid someone gets stabbed, right? Something that started off as what the youth thought was just going to be a fight has now turned into something way more serious because that knife came out, someone got stabbed. Now maybe it's an accidental manslaughter investigation. Same thing I always try and tell youth too, like what started as your fight, all of a sudden there's no weapons, but you sucker punched someone in that fight, they fell back and cracked their head on the curb in the parking lot where you were fighting, and now that person died. Again, now we're looking at a manslaughter investigation versus something that just started off as a consent fight. So obviously not condoning physical violence of any sort, and just really trying to help our youth take that step back and look at the potential consequences that can arise from something that they probably think starts off as being a harmless fight. There can really end up being some severe consequences from that. Next one there, child pornography is another issue we see. So basically sharing any intimate pictures or videos of someone who's under the age of 18, that is not legal. So yeah, the Criminal Code of Canada basically states that it's illegal to possess. So have in your possession, take those photos, access, seek out those photos or images, and or distribute them. So any picture that is considered to be sexually explicit in nature of someone under 18. So you can be charged in that case with making or distributing child pornography. So, and that's even if the image is of themselves. So it's something just we need to be really mindful of with our youth. They, innocently or not so innocently, are sending, a picture of themselves. Maybe it's someone that they're in an intimate relationship with, and at that time, they're not thinking anything ill of it, but it gets to that person. Technically, you've at that point in general committed that offense, not necessarily something that would be pursued criminally in that context. However, what happens is that person shares that image with someone else. Now, all of a sudden, we're looking at something much more concerning here. So it's just something to be really mindful of. And again, to emphasize with your kids when you're talking about the dangers of sharing any intimate pictures at all. And then their responsibility too, if they're seeing those images that someone else is sharing, to make sure that they're letting someone know that that's going on, a trusted adult, police, someone at school, parent, anything like that, right? Because we're looking at some pretty serious offenses when that stuff is going on. And that's aside from obviously the, mental health concerns and things that can rise up when those types of images start getting shared and spread around school. Again, looking at criminal charges here. So Extortion's one that we see. So that's when someone tries to use any sort of threat or violence or something to coerce someone into doing something against their will. You know, if you don't show up at the mall at this time and give me your cell phone, I'm going to do this. Or then when we look at something like sextortion, if you don't send me inappropriate images of you, I'm going to threaten you with violence after that. Whatever's going to happen, I'm going to come after you and your family, right? So, and then sometimes that starts with someone, as I said, sort of innocently sharing, you know, one picture with someone who they trust or think they know, and then it sort of escalates from there into this sextortion thing, and it can create a really, really negative cycle, because if you continue to give in to demands of those things, then obviously the demands just keep increasing, and things get much, much worse. And then obviously we can see the massive sort of mental health repercussions that can result from that. And I'm sure everyone has probably seen an instance of that in the media, you know, within North America over the last little bit, for sure. So what can you do if your teen, for example, is being threatened in relation to any sort of intimate images? Hopefully that's something you'll never have to deal with. But if that does come up, number one thing is don't comply with the threat. Save any correspondence that's gone on between you and the perpetrator. So like take screenshots of it, save them, print them off, whatever you need to do. And then it's really just important to tell someone that you trust, right? So we need to empower our youth to feel comfortable coming forward with this sort of stuff. So if you don't feel comfortable coming to mom and dad, a principal, guidance counselor, social worker, police, whatever that looks like, right? And often in these instances, it is really important to get some police involvement on your side, right? Just so the proper routes can be taken. And it's not to say that it's for sure going to end up in charges if that's not what you're looking for, or you know, because we see that sometimes with youth, where some youth just made some bad decisions with an ex or whatever that looks like, and maybe, you know, you're not looking to have this person charged, but you want the police on your side to help make sure that those, you know, images are taken down from where they need to be, and that everyone is educated appropriately on what the consequences could be down the road, and then we can help support school staff and help you access community supports, all that sort of thing. So yeah, just that main thing being that, you know, we don't give in to the demands of a perpetrator, because when you do start to give into demands for threats, for more images, more whatever, it's likely going to keep just escalating until the victim does reach out and seek some external help. So kind of steering back in general just to more basic cyberbullying. If your child's the victim of that, number one thing we want them to do is to discontinue the contact with the bully. So empower them, teach them that their role is to not respond when something like that is going on. Youth are wired, their brains are wired for seeking instant gratification. So if you can get your youth to understand that that person who is, you know, trying to bully them online is being fueled by the response that they get, that will help them so much. Because I can guarantee you, in the majority of these cases, if the person who's being bullied had not responded, removed themselves from the chat group, or whatever the situation was, the perpetrator will likely get bored and move on to the next target. Because like I said, they're seeking that instant reaction and gratification. And that's like, especially with online stuff, that's the big difference too between online and stuff that's taking place in person and physically, right? With the online stuff, you're seeking that instant gratification, and you're sitting at home bored on your phone on Friday night, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna go bully whoever today, and then that person's not feeding into that. You're looking for that dopamine hit, you're on to the next person that's going to feed into that. So yeah, so have them make sure they're not responding. If there has been concerning messages or things going on, try and save those images. Block and delete that person, right? There's no reason they need to have any continued contact with them. Get out of those chat groups. There's nothing, if there's anything you take home from me today, other than when I talk about how much I hate Snapchat, it's like getting out of the chat groups, right? Nothing good comes of these chat groups. And really help them take an emotional break from their devices. If something like this has gone on, the last thing your kid needs to do is then go back on devices, even if they've exited this conversation. Like they don't need to go back on where they might be, you know, a victim of more things happening or whatever that looks like. So help them take a break from it for a little bit of time so they can kind of like change their mindset, move past it. And then once they've left and blocked people and whatnot, or if they've needed to change their accounts for whatever reason, help them create some new accounts where they only have close and trusted friends that are in their circle online, and then that's going to help them prevent this stuff from happening in the future. Reporting is super important, right? So even if it's just happened once and you did all those things right that were on that slide before, it's really important, you know, that someone else knows this is going on, right? So at the school level, if your principals and teachers don't know what's going on, they can't keep you safe within the school. And so it's really important that they know what's going on so they can help deal with the problem at the school level, which might mean bringing in some outside people to help a group of people work on conflict resolution or whatever that might look like, or just in general, if you think something's going to happen to you at recess today, if the teacher doesn't know about it, they can't help keep you safe at recess. So that's really important. When things are taking place online or on social media, it's something that you can report. So especially when we're seeing fake accounts on social media or like threatening things, right? Report it to Instagram, report it to whoever is doing it, and have them help remove the sites as well once you've blocked them. And then as well to the police, obviously, right? So if the incident's severe or it's been really repeated and isn't getting resolved at the school level, and now we're really starting to see things escalated, absolutely, you are well within your rights and you should call the police, right? The safety of your child is the most important thing. So don't ever hesitate to contact the school about what's going on and bring them in the loop, and don't ever hesitate to call us and bring us in the loop as well. We're very, very busy right now. It might take us a little while to get to your call, but that doesn't mean that it's not important to us and that we're going to do everything within our power to help keep your child safe and resolve the situation. If any sexual pictures or videos that have been posted or shared, if there's something that's going around on social media, contact the site where it was posted, report an inappropriate image, they can help take it down. And then again, it's really important to share that stuff with school and share with police, right? Because again, we can't help keep you safe if we don't know about what's going on. And obviously in an instance like this, where we're looking at, you know, inappropriate images being shared, it's something where there should be some follow-up from either school, police, something like that, right? To help educate and help prevent this stuff from going on in the future. And then also to help you access support to combat this stuff, so we're not seeing those like big mental health consequences when stuff like this happens. If friends or peers are being bullied, what can you help your child do? So, you know, encourage them to refuse to participate in this stuff. So, like I said, youth are looking for instant gratification and things that add fuel to their fire. So don't be that person that likes or passes on harmful messages. You know, if someone's saying something in a group chat about someone else, like challenge them and just say like, don't say that stuff. I really like that person, or that's wrong, or leave the chat group. You know, and if it's someone that you know that's being treated poorly, you know, reach out to them, not in the chat group, reach out to them maybe in person the next day at school, or direct message them or whatever, and, you know, let them know that, hey, I saw what happened to you last night. Like, that must have made you feel really bad. I don't think that's right. You know, it's not okay. You know, is there anything I can do to help you? Like, I support you, that kind of thing. And then again, that piece about letting someone, an adult, know what's going on, right? So parents, teachers, principals, police, we can't help you if we don't know what's going on. So please encourage your children to report that stuff, and also encourage them to be that person who stands up to it within chat groups, online, things like that. Other helpful tips are teaching them ways to get out of uncomfortable situations online. And these tips work for uncomfortable situations face to face as well, right? So similar to peer pressure, if they're being peer pressured to do something at the mall on the weekend, at a party, or whatever, right? Like, let's teach them some ways that they can use. Like, so someone's asking for an inappropriate picture. Oh, no, like that's not, I don't want my pictures all over the internet. Or, yeah, no, that's not for me. I don't do that. Using humor to help sort of change the topic or deflect the attention someone else. So someone's asking for an inappropriate picture, you know, maybe you send them a picture of a cucumber instead, right? Something that's going to hopefully deflect, because sometimes it's really hard for youth to sort of stand up and have those difficult conversations. So what are some other ways that they can deflect from it? And then another big one, be willing to be your youth's scapegoat, right? I can't be in this conversation. My parents check my phone all the time. Like, if they see the stuff that's going on in here, I can't be part of that. Or, oh no, I can't, similar to, you know, I can't drink at this party, right? My parents are going to know as soon as I go home and I'll be grounded, whatever, right? Like, be willing to allow your children to use you to be their scapegoat, because that'll help them get out of a lot of situations. It's a really easy way that other kids are going to understand, oh yeah, no, right, I get it, my parents would be mad too, okay, and they might leave you alone just based on that. Empower them to stand up and be firm in their responses and be confident in the decisions they make. These other two here are really, really easy ones, and I kind of touched on them. Ignore stuff that's happening, right? If you don't fuel that fire, they will likely move on to the next thing. I'll talk about this a bit more in a bit as well, like how teaching them that they don't need to urgently respond to text messages, messages online, things like that, right? Like it's not something, you're still a good friend if you respond to a text message 2 hours later. It doesn't need to be instant, or you kind of get really caught up in this need to respond right away, right? So teach them to turn notifications off on their phone, or just sort of like take certain times per day where they do spend online responding to things, and then it doesn't need to be instant. Because again, the bully is going to likely move on to something else that's going to give them that instant gratification. Blocking and deleting people, right? Just get right out of that situation. If someone's harassing you online, you block them, delete them, done, end of story, right? And then if they start to find other avenues to target you, that's when we can start to look at that stuff like harassment, right? And it's a different conversation. Okay, this is the main thing to keep in mind, again, other than when I talk about how terrible Snapchat is. So teenage brains, young brains, they are wired for social interaction and bonding with others. They are just not, they don't have the ability to make appropriate decisions or exhibit appropriate levels of impulse control when they are young. That area of their brain up here, it does not fully develop until they're in their mid-20s. So we can't expect them to be able to make all these great decisions online. It is just so, so vital for us to provide guidance and boundaries to them so that they are safe online, right? The way they are wired, they are meant to push boundaries. They're meant to be curious. They're meant to seek out things. They're going to have struggles with impulse control. So they need us as adults to help step in and keep them safe online, even if that means we're going to deal with pushback from them. So some things you can help them to do online. And I always say this to you, so I'm talking to you. First off, I always ask how many of them have cell phones, and everyone's hand goes up, even from a super young age now. So if your kids are young and are asking for phones, it's not my job to tell you how to parent your kids, but it's something to think about. Do they need a phone? Do they need access to all these things online that are kind of increasing their vulnerability? Next question is, okay, for those of you that have social media profiles, how many of you have profiles that are private? And overwhelmingly, a lot of people have public profiles. So then I always say, okay, well, for me, the only reason as a young person why you would need to have a profile that is not private is if you are a celebrity and you're looking for that blue little verified check beside your name on Instagram. Otherwise, there's absolutely no reason as a young person why you would have a social media profile that's not private. So emphasize that. And when you're helping your kids set up social media accounts, because you should be helping in those situations and be aware of what they are doing online, that's step one. So make their profiles private. If their profile is not private, anybody in the world can search them up online and see everything that they have posted. Next one I always ask to youth is, how many of you have people that are friends on whatever it might be, Snapchat, Instagram, whatever it is they all use these days, that you don't know in person? And again, all the hands go up, right? There's this pressure among youth to accept friend requests from everyone, right? And it's often, okay, like, let's go through your list here. Do you actually know this person? Well, that's Sarah's cousin who goes to Saunders, and she plays volleyball with someone and someone that you know. So maybe indirectly, like 8 degrees of separation, they know this person, but they don't really know this person. So that person who you don't really know, does that person need to see everything that you are posting online on social media? Absolutely not. So really empower them to not add people they don't know in person, and then every so often help them go through their friend list and delete people that they haven't met in real life, right? Or if they already have their stuff set up, that's what you can do as a parent right now, is when you sit down with them, okay, so we're going to make your profile private. We're just going to go through this friend list and let's figure out who you know in real life and who you want to actually access and be able to see what you are posting. Super, super important. Really help them avoid large group chats. It happens a ton on Snapchat. The amount of calls that I have dealt with in the last few weeks, like I said, that have all started from these silly group chats on Snapchat that have escalated to massive fights in the community or at school. It's overwhelming. It's crazy. And again, within those group chats, they're in there, and yes, they know a handful of people in there, but the other 50 people in that chat, they may not even know, right? And everything's getting shared amongst there. And then again, we talk about that vigilante mindset in these kids, and it's just adding fuel to the fire by putting them in that situation where, again, they don't have that brain capacity to make good decisions. So really help them avoid being in those group chats. That doesn't mean they can't be in the group chat, with their volleyball team, or they can't be in a group chat with their youth group or whatever that looks like, but it's the big group chats that come up that you don't really know everyone in it. And at the end of the day, they're smart enough to know whether the content that's being shared within that group chat is something they should be a part of or not. That being said, it is hard for them to sometimes deny that request when someone's trying to pull them into these chats. So really help them with that. And that's your job as a parent to help them go through that stuff and sort of see what it is that they're doing. So yeah, parental controls are really important with them as well. If you can access any outside like apps and things that help you monitor what your kid is doing online. And that's not you spying on them. That's again, you being a good parent and being aware and helping them because they're not in that brain mindset to make good decisions online yet. So that's on you to take some of that on. Snapchat gets trickier because all that stuff kind of disappears. Snapchat does have a new parental sort of control feature in it that allows you to see who they're communicating with in the last, I believe it's like 7 days. You can't see what they're posting or what the content was, but at least you can know who it is that they're communicating with. So that can be helpful. Teach them to trust their gut, right? This is in real life and online, right? If something doesn't feel right, something doesn't feel good, empower them to tell someone about it. And hopefully that trusted outlet can be you because you fostered a good relationship with your kids where they trust you and they'll come to you when something is going on. This last piece too is really important, not just online, but in real life. Help them develop those critical thinking skills when it comes to consuming things on the internet, just like you would in any other aspect of life, right? There's a ton of things that are on the internet that are not true. Young people, though, kind of are in that mindset of everything they read online is true. Thankfully, a lot of the news stuff that was on, Facebook, Instagram, that sort of stuff is being filtered now. It's not available in the same way that it was, but as a young person, right, it's really easy to read something online and believe that that is true because it was on the internet, and the internet it has to be true, right? So just teach them to be critical and understand that not everything they see online is going to be true. Right. So as a parent, it's really important for you to be involved in your kids' online activities and regularly going through their social media accounts, talking to them about cyberbullying, right? We looked at those numbers, the number of youth that have been a victim or have witnessed cyberbullying. Those numbers are really high. So it's really likely that your child has witnessed it or has been a victim of it. So have those conversations with them about it. Listen to what they have to say. You're not interrogating them. Letting them know that it's okay for them and it's always okay for them to come to you, and that they're never going to be in trouble for sharing or telling the truth with you. That's really important in fostering that trusting relationship with your kid. I always say to my kids, there's nothing that you can come to me with that we wouldn't be able to work through together, right? And they know that that doesn't mean that there's not going to be consequences for their behavior, but that I will always have their back if they come to me with something. And that's really important. It's really important to build that trusting relationship with your child. And again, without fear of losing privileges. That being said, your role as a parent is to understand that, yes, sometimes there's going to be pushback and there's going to be consequences to things. And for the interest of your kid's safety, the best decision for you to make that day is to take their device away from them because they are not using it safely, or it's creating an environment for them that is not safe, right? And that might be the decision that's made for your family, and that's right for that day, that week, whatever. And they can be upset about it. That's their job as a kid, is to be upset, but your job is to keep them safe. So you need to be okay and willing to put up with that sort of pushback. With any screen stuff, right, it's important to set limits and encourage activities that are going to keep them, more balanced so that they're not on their screens all the time. So your family, it might look like no phones in the bedrooms, and especially no phones in the bedroom after bedtime. I can tell you in my job, I have nothing good comes of a youth having a device in the room at 11 o'clock at night or all night long, right? Like I said, this cyberbullying stuff, it's just like relentless. It's 24/7. The best thing you can do for your kid is give them those 6 or 8 hours at night, whatever it might be, where they can't access those things and they have some sort of a reprieve from it. So they might push back against it, but that's your job as a parent to keep them safe. Going along with that, modeling appropriate use of devices and social media yourself, right? If you're on your phone 24/7 in front of your kid, you can't then ask your kid to, turn theirs off, right? So come up with some things that work for your family and times where you're not going to be on your devices or, they're on theirs and you're interacting with them while they're on their device so that and are taking an active sort of role in what they're doing. Teaching your kids to build resilience and have a good sense of self-esteem. So finding different activities that are going to help foster those traits in them and help them be able to then stand up when this stuff is going on within the school, within the community, whatever it looks like. Teaching them to handle negative in interactions that they're going to have with people or hurtful comments, right? Unfortunately, we can't stop all that stuff from happening. There's going to be instances where that's just going to come up, but if we can equip them with the skills they need to handle those situations, they're going to be so much better going forward. And then if something does come up, have those tough conversations with them after the fact, right? So say they did participate in something cyberbullying online and someone got hurt as a result of it and they didn't speak up about it at the time, okay, so what would you do next time in this situation? And, okay, maybe you could have left the chat group earlier. Maybe you should have let an adult know, whatever that looks like, but it's just really important. Like, don't pretend it didn't happen. Talk about it and help them develop skills so that they can respond differently next time. I've touched on this a ton, right? This just basically shows that increased use of social media is going to increase the likelihood of being bullied online. It's not rocket science, right? The more you're online, the more likely this stuff's going to happen. And then when we look at potential protective factors, the more involved a parent is and is aware of what they're used to doing online, the less likely they are to be bullied online. And then we also see an increase in cyberbullying in youth that have difficulty making friends. So the more you can help support them get involved in activities where they can make friends in real life, the better off they're going to be online, right? And there's lots of different ways you can foster that, getting them involved in clubs, sports, music, youth groups, community centers, whatever it is, just kind of really forcing them to get outside in the community and do things in person, in real life with people. This one I added today. It wasn't in my presentation originally, but I've spent a lot of time over the last couple of weeks dealing with issues in schools that all started with Snapchat. So yeah, I mean, I guess I don't get called when good stuff happens on Snapchat, but to me, Snapchat is the worst. I know we're getting short on time, so I'll try and be quick here. But so Snapchat, easy for predators to find your kids. If they are on Snapchat, make sure you turn off the location setting thing on that. I think it's called putting them in like ghost mode so that not everyone who is on Snapchat with them can see their location. I don't think I need to explain why that's dangerous. Mental health issues we see with Snapchat. So it's so addictive for these youths. That's the way the app is set up, right? It's meant to be addictive because that's how Snapchat gets users and makes their money and all those things. And so for a young person with that brain that is already super susceptible to addictive things, try to keep up with Snap streaks. I think it like rates you on who's your best friend on Snapchat because you've communicated with them the most and consistently and all of that. So for a young person, like that gets really challenging because their worthiness as a friend gets tied to how much they're using this app and communicating with this person online. So it just creates a whole host of problems and very easy to see how that can lead to a lot of mental health issues. And then again, the pressure to be involved in these group chats and accept friend requests from people they don't know, right? So really help empower them to make good decisions on there and, just use the app for what it is meant to be, which is sending, cute pictures and communicating with people, Again, the bullying stuff, I won't go too deep into this because like I said, we deal with this a ton. It all starts in these group chats. It bleeds over into schools, bleeds over in the community. People are getting assaulted, hurt, everything. Drug dealers use Snapchat to seek out youth and sell drugs on there. That's another conversation. And then when we talked about the news stuff a bit, Snapchat has its own sort of news feed that youth can access and they're not filtered at all, right? And also contain a ton of mature content. So you wouldn't let your kid go on Pornhub, but you let them go on Snapchat and you don't realize that some of the content that they're able to access through Snapchat is inappropriate and mature and not stuff that you want them to be consuming. So just keep that in mind. And I said quickly before, Snapchat does have a newer parental control feature called Family Center, where you can go on and have a bit of an idea who your youth is interacting with on there. I think this is my last slide. So how can you help your child disconnect sort of from this overwhelming online world? It's your job as a parent, right? So force them to take breaks from their screen, right? Come up with those boundaries, come up with family rules, what works best from you so that they have breaks from their screens and time to have face-to-face interactions and participate in other things that they like doing, hobbies, sports, music, all of that stuff, whatever it is that they like. Just get them off their phones and outside if we can, outside in the community. You know, you still need to interact with their peers. We don't want them sitting at home by themselves all the time. It's important for them to be out interacting with peers at this age, but let's do it in a way that they can take some breaks from their screens. Teach them to turn off notifications on their device. I think when I was doing some research for this, one of the stats I saw is like some youth are getting as many as like 2,000 notifications a day on their phone, right? Like that's insane. And again, being that youth brain, like you don't have the ability to filter that out, and it's constant. You have to respond to it. You have to look at it. So if you can teach them to turn those notifications off, then that'll help give them their brain a bit of a break from that, right? Like there's no reason, and some schools are getting better at, you know, handing in phones at the beginning of class or whatever that looks like, but there's no reason they should be sitting in math class and having their phone pinging 40,000 times throughout math class. You're not learning anything in math class if your phone is going off 40 times, even if you're not taking it out and looking at it, right? It's distracting you. No phones in the room after bedtime. Again, it's not my job to tell you how to parent, but like I said, nothing good comes from that constant 24/7 access. So if it means you have to turn off the Wi-Fi, have a place where all your devices go overnight, whatever that looks like. And you know, challenge yourself to put away. It's easy for us. We are, you know, social media, it's set up to get us all addicted to it, right? So I'm guilty of it as well. Like to remind myself, I try and, if I'm with my kids, I try and like leave my phone upstairs in my bedroom, because if it's right beside me, I'm gonna pick it up and look at it. But if it's away, I'm not, right? And try and carve out specific times where I am gonna look at that. So and again, the big thing, you know, you do have to be willing to deal with pushback from your kid. Your job is to set boundaries. Your kids aren't gonna love the rules that you make all the time, but your job is to keep them safe. And the more you can help them in that avenue, the better they're going to be online. An analogy I like to use is, you know, if your 3-year-old's throwing a tantrum because you won't let them have your car keys and turn on your car and try to drive, well, you're not going to give in to that tantrum, right? Because that would just be insanely unsafe, right? So your 8-year-old wants an iPhone and wants to be on Snapchat, and they're going to have a big tantrum when you say no, but that's your job to keep them safe. You have to be willing to set those boundaries and sort of hold the line on them. And just some resources here, some really good stuff. If you're on Instagram, Wait Until 8th is on Instagram. I love them. They're great. They provide a ton of data-driven like research on that is waiting until 8th grade to give your youth a phone. A lot of their stuff is like waiting until you're 16 to access social media, things like that, but it's all data-driven, so it's great. And then some stuff through the Canadian government and through the Canadian Centre for Child Protection, other great resources that you can look at if you're looking for support with helping your kids navigate the online world. So thank you. Sorry that went much longer than I thought I did. I hope you can tell I'm pretty passionate about this stuff, and I really think it's really important, and as a parent, for us to help support our kids through this scary online world right now. So hopefully that was helpful to you.
Yes. Thank you so much. I just really appreciate that foundation of like what is cyberbullying, and just hearing that it helps educate. And then establishing boundaries coming after, and all the strategies you mentioned to support our youth. It was very insightful, and I really appreciate your willingness to share. Um, and looking, if any participants have any questions they would like to share, the Q&A feature is along the top toolbar. So that is available. If you would like to ask a question, we'll hang around for a few more minutes in case questions come through. And I will also enable the microphone feature if anybody does not have access to the Q&A feature. The microphone may be an option for you.
Okay, so maybe if we don't have any further questions, I can
Hello?
put up our
Could I ask a
last.
question?
Oh, yes, of
Yes.
course.
Thank you.
Hi, sorry, I didn't know how to do the typing part.
Yep.
Not being able to access it, so I just unmuted. Is that okay?
Yes. Thanks.
I'm just curious. about you doing something like this in a school setting? Is this ever an option to get this information out to more parents as far as like literally coming into the classroom or even just to the students themselves? Um, just to educate them further. I'll give you an example with Snapchat in particular. My oldest daughter is in grade 7, and we've had a little bit of trouble where we don't believe in her having a phone yet or accessing Snapchat and any of these things. Just at her age, I don't believe it's necessary. But there's sort of that pressure in the classroom where she's the only name on the whiteboard whose name is not there to be able to chat with her friends, which she's been educated enough that she's totally okay with it. But I wish more children at that age and their parents would realize how unnecessary it is and how dangerous these rooms are.
Yeah, and okay, so I can answer this.
Okay.
As far as the education piece in the schools and stuff go, I'm going to stay politically correct. And it's just a tricky time where we sort of are navigating what the role of the police is going to look like in the school going forward as far as education. In the past, when the school resource program was running, in its full capacity, then there was a lot more opportunities for this education. We're really hopeful that in the future, there'll be some different avenues where we can do this. This is a great starting piece. And I believe the hope with this is that there'll be a recorded session that can be shared with the school so parents and students can access this as well. So I think that's a great step in the right direction. And then in-person stuff, we'll see how that pans out down the road. And then, yeah, your second piece about how do you sort of navigate that, with your youth who's pushing back, you're doing what's right for your family. It's great that she accepts that. I'm hoping in the States, they have a lot of devices and phones that are super like bare bones. So they're great starting devices for someone at that age, right? They allow you to like text and phone, and that's pretty much about it. So those are, because the other issue nowadays is, parents want to be able to connect with their youth and know where their kids are and all of that stuff. So I understand the safety piece of that and feeling, good about being able to connect with your kids when you need to. So I'm hoping some of those types of devices are going to come to Canada soon. As far as I know, I don't think we have any here, but they're very bare bones. I don't know whether those would allow your daughter to then access some of that stuff that she feels she needs for school. But another avenue is whether that could be accessed via a tablet instead during whatever supervised hours at home, similar to Google Classroom or whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
So maybe being creative about how she can connect. Or another avenue too is, and I know a lot of parents and like colleagues will, you set up that app on your phone, and there's certain times where in a supervised setting they can use some of that on your phone with you there and whatever, right? It's kind of a way to ease into it as well. So that might be an option that works for you too.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I just have a little bit of a general question, maybe just
Thanks.
using your police background. Just wondering, with the consequences and with the school, just wondering why nothing else is considered except for suspension. I don't think suspension is an effective way of dealing with any bullying, because then kids are just sitting at home mocking and gaming and saying, woohoo, I'm at home and you guys are at school, suckers. Like, it's not a good accountability for these kinds of things, and the consequences are just not, there's no benefit to it in the long run. I just wondered if you ever, like, why is it just that?
So I'm not an educator, so I'm not probably the best answer to this. However, based on my experience in the schools, I will say that I wholeheartedly agree with you. And I think that anyone working within safe schools and a lot of the school professionals are on the same page. And I think we're in a time where we're trying to navigate how that can change going forward. I think from their perspective, the utmost importance for them is keep creating a safe environment at the school. And unfortunately, that sometimes means removing that student from the school. And a lot of the cases right now, it's because there's not enough resources within the school to create an alternative place for them to be in the school where it's safe, and that stuff isn't fostering, if that makes sense. Because I do wholeheartedly believe, and a lot of the students that we deal with, like the worst place for them to be when they're, something's gone on is to send them back home where, like you said, they are just going to be on video games all day or not supervised or whatever that looks like. I think it's just something that all that data is coming out that's showing it's maybe not the most effective consequence, but how can we, given the resources we have in the schools, revisit that and still keep everyone safe within the schools. And so please chime in if there's more that you would add to that.
the concept of restorative practices comes to mind, where we look at the impact of aftermath. So restorative practices can look at the proactive approach, but also the responsive approach. So helping people understand the impact of their actions and really working through that conflict and navigating and repairing the harm that has taken place. So it is a part of like what goes on in that administrator perspective, while going deciding the next step. But definitely an administrator would allow like have more input in this type of question, but that's just kind of my insight. Mhm. Thank you for sharing. Thumbs up emoji. Yes, and if there are any further questions too, Cindy will put up our contact info.
Okay.
You don't mind?
All right. Do I have to take control back again, or can I
I
just
will
share?
stop sharing.
There we
You
go.
can, yep, reshare there.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you for your patience.
Yeah, thank you. And there's a question that came up that is just wondering if this will be presented in school, and if so, what grade does it start? So this particular session is recorded, so it's a parent resource, and feel free to share this. I guess I could say this webinar with your school administrator if you're looking to kind of bridge that conversation and how to support.
Okay. All right, so Constable Wilson, thank you so much for your informative presentation, especially this week during our bullying awareness week. Should anyone have any questions, you'll notice our contact information for the Wellbeing series. Our colleague Caitlin wasn't here tonight, so Megan has been so gracious to step in and to help us out. But myself, I'm Cindy and Caitlin. We are the contact information. And you will be receiving an email that we're just asking for some feedback about the presentations. And we would encourage you to continue to keep checking our website or sign up for our mailing list, because we will continue to have different webinars throughout the school year. So again, thank you for inviting us into your evening tonight. And I would encourage you to join us tomorrow night, because there actually will be a school staff tomorrow night from Safe Schools and Wellbeing that do deal with safe schools. If you have questions, continued questions about how things would look in the schools as well. So again, thank you so much. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.